everyone. How is everyone doing today? This is Alan Gotra. Hopefully this live stream is reaching you at 1 o'clock. If you are new to our channel, please hit the like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you'll be notified of any future episodes. Today's episode is has to do with normally on True Crime Man's Dark Imagination, I dress in some sort of suit that would represent a mob persona. But today I'm just feeling kind of whimsical and thought I would present an episode I've been working on. In the 1930s, the mob saw the need for a special organization to rid themselves of traitors and or rats. The head of this organization was ruthless, brutal, and somewhat psychotic. Oh, thunderstorm. And here is his story. Albert Anastasia was born Umberto Anastasio in Trompea, Calabria, Italy. His parents were Raffaello Anastasio and Luisa Nomina de Filippi, but the family went with his father's surname Anastasio until Albert decided to use Anastasia in 1921. He was also part of a large family, having 8 brothers and 3 sisters. Albert himself was married to Elsa Barnisi, whom he had a son by the name of Anthony Anastasia Jr. Just a year before Prohibition hit the shores of the U.S., Anastasia and 3 of his 8 brothers arrived in New York City, where they would illegally enter the United States to begin their life of work. After only being in the U.S. for more than 2 years, Anastasia was already drawing the attention of the law, and was in fact convicted of murdering longshoreman George Torino in March 1921 after the pair had an argument. Of course, back then, the penalty was death and a long trip to Sing Sing State Prison, where he would sit on death row until his execution. Luckily for Albert, he somehow, possibly through legal complications, managed to swing a new trial for 1922, and coincidentally, the 4 main prosecution witnesses had disappeared in the time leading up to the newly scheduled trial. This resulted in Albert Anastasia walking free. His life as a free man didn't last too long, though, as in June 1923 he was convicted again, this time for illegal possession of a firearm in which he would be locked away for 2 years. By the late 1920s, he'd worked his way up the International Longshoremen's Association, which resulted in his control of 6 union local chapters in Brooklyn. It was during this time that Albert Anastasia would become connected with Joe the Boss Masseria, and of course associating himself with the likes of Joe Adonis, Vito Genovese, Frank Costello, and the most famous of all, the chairman of the mob, Charles Lucky Luciano. It was these powerful connections that helped Albert climb the ladder and virtually become untouchable. In 1928, he was charged with a murder in Brooklyn, but the witnesses either disappeared or refused to testify in court. In 1930, we saw the assassination of 2 old-time bosses who controlled the organized crime rackets in New York. First to be taken out was Joe the Boss Masseria in April of 1931, who was lured into a meeting at Coney Island, Brooklyn. Halfway through the meal that he and Lucky were having, Lucky excused himself from the table to visit the restroom. The plan was then forged so that Anastasia, Vito Genovese, Joe Adonis, and Bugsy Siegel would rush the dinner and take out Masseria. The plan worked perfectly, and Joe was left dead holding on to a playing card, the Ace of Spades. This would put an end to the Castellammarese War and would retain peace on the streets to avoid prying law officials' eyes. It was during this phase that Maranzano would then reorganize the mafia into 5 families. Anastasia was appointed the underboss of Vincent Mangano's family, which today is known as the Gambino crime family. Not long after the departure of Joe Masseria was the murder of Salvatore Maranzano, who was a completely different character to Joe the Boss. Joe the Boss was a slob. Maranzano was respectable and well-dressed. In September 1931, Luciano's men entered the offices of Maranzano and disposed of his bodyguards, who weren't armed at the time due to a new policy that Maranzano had enforced so that they wouldn't be found packing any firearms if searched by the law. With the bodyguards out of the way, Luciano's men shot and stabbed Maranzano in his own office. It was decided that sometimes distasteful things must be done to keep the commission nice and profitable for the good of the National Crime Commission. This included killing people who endangered the continued flow of cash into the commission's coffers. The commission decided that they needed to establish a separate branch of the commission responsible for one thing and one thing only: the murder of those people the bosses said needed to be killed. Louis Lepke Buchalter was put in charge of what the press called Murder Incorporated. To assist Lepke with his duties, the commission appointed Albert Anastasia, nicknamed the Lord High Executioner, to be Lepke's right-hand man. Lepke would never give a direct order to any of his killers to do a job. Instead, Lepke used trusted men like Mendy Weiss and Louis Capone to issue the final order and decree to the hitmen chosen. The first order of business for Lepke and Anastasia was to assemble a crack hit team to do the actual dirty work. Through Louis Capone, who was close to Anastasia, Lepke had been nurturing a group of homicidal maniacs, some of whom would rather kill than breathe the cool, fresh air of Brooklyn. These killers were called the Boys from Brownsville. The Boys from Brownsville were hardly the only killers employed by Murder Incorporated, but they were the foundation that led to as many as 100 freelance assassins being put on a steady weekly salary of $125 and up, to be ready to kill whenever an order was given. These men were sometimes paid extra for a job, especially well done. They were allowed to operate in designated territories in the gambling and loan sharking businesses, or any illegal operation, like hijackings and even kidnappings. But one thing was for sure: even if a member of Murder Incorporated didn't kill anyone for a month or 2 or 3, his killing salary came in steadily every week. Anastasia had become an important person to Lucky Luciano, and due to his loyalty, he was placed in co-control of the National Crime Syndicate's Enforcement Department, known to most as Murder Incorporated. He would share his role with Louis Lepke Buchalter, who was a leading labor racketeer. Murder Incorporated operated for almost a decade, and in that time it is said that up to 1,000 murders were committed. That's 100 a year, and most were never solved. Anastasia was nicknamed the Mad Hatter and the Lord High Executioner during his leadership of Murder Incorporated, and hired killers to take out some of the orders as well as getting involved himself. Albert's business card that he carried around with him actually stated that he was a salesperson. With the 1941 arrest of Abe Relis on murder charges, law enforcement finally dismantled Murder Incorporated. Abe Relis was responsible for providing hitmen to Anastasia during the Murder Incorporated years, and it was Abe Relis who turned rat to escape the death penalty by turning in 7 members of Murder Incorporated. One of the men he was about to implicate was Anastasia. Bad move. Anastasia had power and contacts and decided to put up a $100,000 reward to take out Abe Relis. Abe Relis was then found dead. To many witnesses, he had fallen from a hotel window, but others say that his bodyguards cashed in on the reward and pushed him out the window. The same happened a year later then to another associate of Anastasia who was about to turn rat on him, and again the man in question, Anthony Romeo, was found beaten and shot to death not long after. Anastasia played a big part during World War II, and it was he who originated the plan to win a pardon for Luciano by helping the war effort. America needed allies in Sicily to advance the invasion of Italy, and the desire of the Navy to dedicate its resources to the war. Anastasia orchestrated a deal to obtain lighter treatment for Luciano while he was in prison, and after the war, a parole in exchange for the mafia protecting the waterfront and Luciano's assistance with his associates in Sicily. In 1942, Anastasia became a technical sergeant for the U.S. Army in a bid to move away from crime, as investigations were currently taking place that could incriminate him. The following year, in 1943, Anastasia received U.S. citizenship and was honorably discharged in 1944, where he would eventually set up home in Fort Lee, New Jersey. In 1951, Anastasia was summoned by the U.S. Senate to answer questions about organized crime, but he refused to comment on any of the questions that were put his way. You have to remember that Albert Anastasia, at this point, was only an underboss to Mangano, and Mangano became very jealous of his connections with the likes of Luciano and Costello, to the extent they would often end in heated arguments or physical brawls. In 1951, Vincent Mangano went missing, never to be found. And later in the same year, the body of Philip Mangano was discovered in a wetland, shot 3 times. To this day, no one really knows who did it, but the finger does point to Anastasia in some form or another. The commission met up, and in the end, with the help of Frank Costello, Anastasia was made boss of the Mangano family, renaming it the Anastasia crime family. In March 1952, Anastasia was again reported to the order of a murder of Arnold Schuster, who was a young lad who had witnessed a bank robbery, could identify the thief, Willie Sutton. With the evidence that Arnold provided, Sutton was arrested, and allegedly Anastasia saw Arnold Schuster being interviewed on television. He said, "I can't stand squealers. Hit that guy." The order was carried through in the same month when Arnold was shot to death on a Brooklyn street, which resulted in a public accusation against Anastasia in 1953. Vito Genovese wanted to take control of the Luciano crime family, but in order to do so would need to kill Costello and Anastasia. To do this, Vito tried to turn Anastasia's supporters against him by labeling him as an unstable killer who threatened to bring pressure from the law to the Cosa Nostra. The plan seemed to work, as over the next couple of years he won the support of Anastasio's capo, the one and only Carlo Gambino, who he offered leadership of Anastasia's crime family in return for his alliance. Vito also gained Meyer Lansky, who was an influential part of the crime scene in those days and the manager of Lucky Luciano's business interests and affairs. Like many mobsters, greed got the better of Anastasia, which triggered Meyer Lansky in helping Vito Genovese. You see, Lansky in the 1950s controlled casinos across Cuba and offered the Cosa Nostra bosses lesser shares of his profits. However, when Anastasia demanded a larger share, Lansky refused. This led to Anastasia starting his own casino racket in the same area as Lansky, helping him to come to an easy decision to give Genovese his full support. After spending 1 year in federal prison in 1955 for tax evasion and getting hit with a $20,000 fine, Anastasia was also close to losing his citizenship and getting deported. Things took a turn for the worst in 1957 when Genovese moved on Costello. This saw Vincent the Chin Gigante make a hit on Costello. However, due to Gigante shouting towards Costello something along the lines of, "This is for you, Frank," the hit was a fail. Frank Costello turned around, at which point the bullet narrowly missed his head, causing a superficial wound. This was enough for Costello, who then stepped down as boss and handed the family over to Vito Genovese, who would rename the family after himself, which it still holds today. Later in 1957, Anastasia's underboss at the time, a man named Frank Scalise, was assassinated. According to Joseph Valachi, Anastasia approved the hit. Joseph Valachi testified in front of Congress in 1963 as to the inner workings of the mafia. 1957 was certainly a busy time of the year, and towards the end of it we would see the assassination of Albert Anastasia in what would be one of the most high-profile murders in mob history. The assassination would spark huge media and public interest. On the morning of October 25, 1957, Anastasia went to a local barbershop in Midtown Manhattan for a shave. Anastasia's bodyguard parked the car in an underground garage and then took a walk outside, leaving Anastasia with no muscle behind him. Completely defenseless and relaxing into the barber's chair, two men wearing scarves covered their faces, burst through the front door of the shop, shoved the barber out of the way, and fired at Anastasia at point-blank range. It is said that after the first rippling of bullets headed his way, Anastasia lunged at the masked men. Unfortunately for Albert, he had actually tried to attack the killer's reflections in a mirror. Eventually, he would drop down to the floor, dead. The two assassins kept firing into Anastasia's body, emptying their magazines. The murder sparked huge public awareness, and a high-profile police investigation would take place, although no one was convicted of the assassination. Of course, with a hit like this, there are plenty of conspiracy theories, one of which was that Joe Gallo was the hitman for the Profaci crime family. The Profaci theory is that Genovese gave the Anastasia murder contract to Joe Profaci, and then handed it down to Gallo, who was believed to say to an associate at the time, "You can just call the five of us the Barbershop Quintet." And thus, one of the most brutal murderers of Murder Incorporated, Albert Anastasia, died by the very principles of which he lived. After Anastasia's death, Gambino was expected to be proclaimed boss of Anastasia's family at the November 14, 1957 meeting at Appalachia. But that meeting had been raided by the police, and Gambino had to wait. Genovese enjoyed a short reign as family boss, and in 1957, after the disastrous Appalachian meeting, Luciano, Costello, and Gambino conspired to entrap Genovese with a narcotics conviction, bribing a drug dealer to testify he had personally worked with Genovese. On July 7, 1958, Genovese was indicted on narcotics trafficking charges. On April 17, 1959, he was sentenced to 15 years in state prison. Anastasia lived in a 25-room, 6,529 square foot hilltop mansion located in Fort Lee, New Jersey, from 1947 until his death. In 1958, less than a year after his death, comedian Buddy Hackett and his wife purchased the mansion, and after renovations, lived there through most of the 1960s. The mansion sold for $6.9 million in late December 2017. The house was last sold in December 2018 for $3.6 million and demolished in March 2019. Okay, so Lepke's Murder Incorporated didn't limit its exploits to the New York City area. In fact, Murder Incorporated eventually employed anywhere from 150 to 200 killers around America, and it was reported that these killers may have committed as many as 800 to 1,000 murders from the late 1920s until Murder Incorporated's demise in the early 1940s. Of course, the group known as the Syndicate continued their business model as usual. After the Anastasia assassination, the barber chairs at the Park Sheraton Hotel were repositioned to face away from the mirror. The Anastasia chair was later auctioned off for $7,000. In February 2012, the chair became an exhibit at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. I have a friend of mine who is a former federal prosecutor and a former FBI agent, and he told me that basically what brought the demise of the mafia period, is that they started getting rats. and people that were testifying against them, whereas before there wouldn't be any rats. So the mafia could function that way. Now, let's see. Krista says, it's wild how much public support the mob had, or at least seemed to have back in the old days. Well, the mob actually did things faster than politicians, and that's why certain people supported the mob. I know when the mob first came to New Orleans, they were involved in democratic politics here in the city. And of course, I live about 7 miles outside of the city. So, rich history down here in the mob, as well as New York and Los Angeles and Kansas City, Miami, mostly in the late 50s, early 60s, being as close to Cuba, where they had a lot of the casinos that were run by Meyer Lansky. Now, if you want to read more about this, I got most of the information from newspapers and a book written by John Davis called Mafia Dynasty, The Rise and Fall of the Gambino Crime Family. And it was published by Harper Paperbacks, and Anastasia's mentioned all the way through it. I did a skim while I was doing the research. Kimberly, I think that's true. They were like Robin Hood. But they enriched themselves as well. I mean, we see a lot of things like I keep seeing things from The Sopranos, and I hear a lot of things that occurred down here as a result of the mafia. They infiltrated the government down here. As a matter of fact, Frank Costello got one of our governors, Huey Long, who was corrupt as hell. We have the best politicians money can buy down here. And he wanted to put slot machines into Jefferson Parish. And he needed Huey Long's permission and, actually not really permission, but he got his okay. And Huey Long took kickbacks from it, went to the deduct box, along with the sheriff that was down here. So, yeah, Chicago was, Chicago. Yeah, well, look what's happening in Chicago now. A lot of warfare going on there. So, but it's interesting. The mafia is very interesting because it was a criminal organization that first started off as a benevolent organization. If you go back and look at one of our episodes that I did with Sal Perricone, who's a mafia historian, Sicilian himself, he explains how the mafia actually got started in Sicily and made its way over to the New World. Now, we have some new episodes coming up Friday, and the reason why I did this one today was I was feeling kind of whimsical. I wanted to test and see what it was like for the bandwidth, because for some reason I tried to do a live stream last week, actually 2 of them, and the bandwidth just wasn't there. Well, today it is, but we're having a massive rainstorm outside. And Friday we're supposed to have, get this, sounds suspicious, a power outage from 8 o'clock in the morning till 2. That's why I uploaded the episode on Dark Mistress, Madame Lalaurie, which was extremely interesting to do the research. Again, she is one of the legends of New Orleans history, and we see a lot of things that go through New Orleans history. Actually, it had a lot to do with the mob. The first mob boss was actually Raphael Agnello, who was assassinated in 1869 here in New Orleans. And he was shot down with a blunderbuss, if you know what that is. It's a shotgun that you shoot rocks out of, blew the back of his head off. And this is 1869. So if you want to go and look at some of the origins of the mob, then you can go look at how the episode of the first Mafia Don that we did, and also the interview with Sal Perricone. We also talk about what's known as the Black Hand. Now, let me dispel a myth about the Black Hand. The Black Hand was not an organization in American terms. Okay, it was a method of extortion. Okay, let me repeat that. It was not an organization. It was a method of extortion. if they wanted to extort money from, say, like an Italian grocer or a Sicilian grocer, actually they extorted money from their own people. They preyed on their own people. So when you look at how they made their money, they went after the easiest targets first. And the business of the Black Hand, which is about the Walter Lamanna kidnapping, has to do with, how the Black Hand method was used. They would go to him and they'd say, hey, you got a nice store here. It'd be a shame if it caught on fire. It'd take you $100 a month, maybe. That was a lot of money back then. And a lot of these grocers were going, well, what do I do? Well, if they didn't pay that, then they would see a black handprint on their fences, which their fences were around their houses. And they knew that something was going to happen to their family, and they'd wind up paying up. So the Black Hand was a method more than it was an organization. Now, in Sarajevo, there was a group called Narodna Obrana, which was the Black Hand. They were instrumental in assassinating, which was yesterday, the anniversary was yesterday, of assassinating Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which was one of the triggers for World War I. It wasn't the trigger, it was a trigger for World War I. I'm trying to also find some other Jack the Ripper suspects that I can do that there's a lot of research on. One person sent me a comment about Francis Tumblety saying that he had been arrested in New Orleans. And my comment for that is, we didn't concentrate on that. We concentrated on where he was from and was he in England at the time of the murders. That's what we concentrated on. So if he got arrested in New Orleans, I'm sure he was arrested in every major city because he went looking around for male companionship. So anyway, well, that's the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It is a little short. We're running about 28 minutes. I have a new one coming up that Bo Walker, if you know who Bo Walker is, he does a lot of narration for me. I'm trying to keep up with writing new scripts so I could get David and Krista involved again and other people that would like to narrate. Like I said, I got a comment from somebody that wanted to do a collaboration. They only had 2,000 subscribers. Well, I don't care. I want to help them out. Okay, it helps everybody out when you do collaborations here on YouTube. We're also on TikTok now. That's basically brought a few people over to this side, and we're having a lot of fun. Like I said, I had to slow down a little bit on my episodes. I have a class that I'll be teaching at a local community college in American History 2, and I'm trying to get a curriculum passed for a course on the Holocaust. I've taught that class before, and it's very interesting, and I'm trying to get that done. But we're up to over 6,500 subscribers, which, we started, it was relatively low. In October 2017, this October, to be 5 years that we've had the channel. So we're not going to run out of material. I'm always coming up with new material. I'd like to start another channel with just strictly history, not really to teach it, but to show interesting facets of it. And I really enjoy this. And like I said, we may be moving down. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. I will be moving down to maybe 1 or 2 episodes a month after July, and it may start picking up after that in the fall. Depends on what's going on. I understand we discontinued the drawing for the T-shirts and the books. Again, the books are still on sale. In fact, I just submitted the photographs for my new book. The publisher is putting them in. They're going to send me what's called a galley, which is it's a PDF file that looks like the inside of the book, no cover yet. But they went through it and we edited it. It came out great. There was very little editing. They kind of thought I was a little heavy on the court transcripts and some. But this book, which is going to be entitled Southern Evil, Murderous Tales of Racism, Greed, Lust, and Jealousy. That's the title that I picked. is going to have a chapter in there about the Axeman. It's going to be on the Axeman of New Orleans. It's going to be it's a deep dive into that. And it's also going to be, there's also a chapter in it called The Never Ending Vendetta, which has to do with a series of murders that went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between mafia families in the turn of the 20th century. So be on the lookout for them. It's going to be hopefully it's going into, like I said, our 6th year. The subscribers keep going up. People love the material. You get your trolls every once in a while, but I've learned to ignore them. And, well, Laura Bell, thank you very much. It's been a while. By the way, you have my condolences. Anyway, I'm not going to let the crowd know what that's about, but I truly feel for you because, like I said, I lost my brother and my sister-in-law in December, and we're still kind of reeling for that. It's difficult to get over. I've learned that grief is the price of love, but we're doing okay. We're getting past it. And Robin, thank you. There have been a couple of people that have bought my books and they really like them, and I'm glad that they like them. Like I said, they're more regionalized, but Southern Evil doesn't have to do with just Louisiana. It goes all over the South, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. There's 3 cases in there from Louisiana because we've had a lot of sickos down here. Okay? No problem, Laura. No problem. Anytime. That's what friends are for. Okay? Are there any questions? Anything we want to talk about? There have been some suggestions that I'm working on now. One of them is called the Southern Charles Manson. Okay, yeah. The Fistful of Podcasts asked me to be on their show again live, so I'm going to be doing that. Hopefully we can do a collaboration where either David or Krista or both of them can guest host a show. That would be pretty cool if we could do that live. Kimberly, thank you very much. My only regret, Kimberly, is that I didn't get to sign them for you. They're still doing well. I can't make a living doing it, believe it or not. The publishers that are going to be doing Southern Evil are a new publisher. In fact, from what I understand, my book is the first nonfiction book they've ever published. And it's going to be... Yes, I did. I authored 5 books. The first one was Italian Louisiana. The second one was Dark Bayou. The third one was a book called Echoes of Valor. And the 4th one was Bloodstained Louisiana. Now, originally there was a book called An Extreme Prejudice. And that had to do with violence against Italians in Louisiana. But I pulled that one off the market and reworked it into Italian Louisiana. And that one was published by a regular publisher. I don't pay to publish. Okay? They give me a certain percentage. I don't pay to publish. There's a lot of independent publishers out there that'll take works and publish them. Echoes of Valor was a book that I did interviewing combat veterans from World War II all the way up to the Iraq War. I pulled it off the market because the publisher screwed it up. Okay, the writing was so small, and you're dealing with people that are, they're in their 80s and 90s, and their vision's not that good. So I plan on reworking it later on down the line, but it's no longer for sale. So basically, I'll have 4 books for sale. And I want to get away from the true crime briefly on my next book. I haven't decided what that's going to be. I'm still working on a topic having to do with the Civil War, the American Civil War. We had a conversation one time when I did a live about the statues being torn down. And some guy said, well, this is a conservative talking point. Well, I'm an historian. All right, history is history. Facts don't have feelings. A lot of times they don't lie. And it bothers me that it's just people don't understand how history is supposed to be understood. All right. And so here in New Orleans, we just had, thank you, Robin. I appreciate it. I'll let you know. In fact, I may have a drawing for it. And top 5 people may get an autographed copy later on. We have a mayor down here that the crime rate's going to crap. Excuse me. Carjackings, murders, assaults, robberies. And she decides she's going to go to Switzerland. Okay, I don't know why, but they put up a statue in Lafayette Square, which is one of the oldest squares in New Orleans, of an Afro pick with a Black Power sign on the top of it. Okay, I'm not a racist by any stretch of the imagination, but the thing is about inclusivity is that somebody gets excluded. Okay, and I understand the push to diversity. I really do understand it. But I think a lot of statues ought to be kind of neutral, and if that's where they want to, where they want to go. So, but anyway, look, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Please, and wait, Drew had a question. He said, "Can you imagine being one of the mafia members?" This is really weird because before my wife and I got married, she was telling me that she would have liked to have been a mafia girlfriend, and then when she saw what kind of can happen to her, she kind of changed her mind about it. I can't imagine being one of the mafia members because in some instances it's bred within the blood. I mean, you're raised in that particular family. Look at Michael Francis. You see his videos all over the place about what life was like in the mafia. And it was really tough for him to get out, but he got out. Sammy the Bull Gravano admitted to 19 murders, and now he is a free man. I can't imagine what... It's a lot of... To be a member of the mafia, you'd have to let go of your conscience and your soul for a while. Because there are certain things that your loyalty is to the family. It's not to your blood, your flesh and blood, because that family is your flesh and blood, and that's where your loyalty lies. So I hope I answered your questions. Yeah, Kimberly, I would too. I'd be in perpetual fear of my life. I've heard of mafia hits that are in the most calmest of situations, then all of a sudden, wham, somebody winds up on the floor with a bullet through their brain. Albert Anastasia got very greedy and thought he was untouchable because of the connections that he had made. Well, I got news for you, buddy. All right? You stepped over a lot of people to get to where you are. You're going to offend someone. It's karma. It's basically karma. So... I enjoy these questions. I wish we had more people, though. Money is nice, but it can't erase the dread. Well, in some instances, for people, it could. John Gotti, for one. He got kind of greedy, too. Look what happened to him. He later got nothing would stick to him, the Teflon Don, and then all of a sudden, wham, he gets cancer in prison, and he dies. I saw the movie Gotti... on, I think it was Netflix or Hulu or something like that with John Travolta. Excellent movie. I thought John Travolta was fantastic. And I'm not a big John Travolta fan, but he did very well in that part, and it dramatized his life to a certain point. I really enjoyed it because I like to know the origins of things and the history of things. There's, we might talk about later on some of the mafia bosses who were offed. That might be some good episodes coming up. There's a lot of material out there, folks. A lot of material. And you guys have been very, very loyal as far as subscribers and fans are concerned. And I really want to extend my appreciation to you through the good times and the bad and the low. But I'm getting tired of talking. Wish I could have a conversation through a Zoom thing or something like that to do an interview. Again, if there are people out there that want to narrate, please let me know. What do I think the extent is now? I think, as far as the mafia is concerned, I'm looking at that Fistful of Podcasts asked me, what do you think the extent is now? I think this is going to sound really weird. I think, it's a progression. When one group leaves, another one steps in. We have the Russian mob. We have, MS-13 has stepped into a lot of places, and they're more brutal than the mafia could ever be. And it's, you're never going to get rid of the bad. Without evil, you couldn't have good. So I think, I don't think the mafia, really, to answer your question, I don't think the mafia has the type of pull that they used to have. If you talk to Sal Perricone, the mafia is dead. It's not the same organization as it was. There's still some people that operate, but they don't have that kind of pull, and there's not a lot of fear in them anymore. So they don't really have any power. They used to corrupt the political system. Well, now the politicians corrupt the political system. So now they don't need the mafia. All right? They just do it. We understand about political assassinations. We've been in, I don't know about you guys, but I have no idea what the hell's going on. I really don't. You hear this side, you hear that side. I just want to be left alone and do my show. That's all I want to do and make money doing it. But the mafia doesn't have the pull it used to have. I remember my wife, her grandfather, one day told her, I don't know if you remember when you were younger, they used to have in the phone book children's phone under the phone number. Well, my wife, Lisa, had a children's phone. And how she got that was her grandfather was a bookie for the mob down here for a little while. And he didn't get too deep into it, but that's how she got her children's phone, because he had a separate line going into the house. And it was kind of funny, because if you look at my wife, she looks Italian. She looks Italian. She's got the brunette hair. She's got gray eyes. Beautiful, beautiful figure. She looks Italian. But her grandfather, she'll tell you she's Scotch-Irish and other things. But that's how she got her own phone at one time, is because her grandfather, who used to work on pinball machines and jukeboxes, okay, which was a big business. And so that's how he got into being a bookie for the mob down here. It was controlled by Carlos Marcello, allegedly controlled by Carlos Marcello. You're going to hear me use alleged and reputed because we all know what was going on. Carlos Marcello used to have a plaque in his office at the Town and Country Motel on Airline Drive, which is out here in Metairie, Louisiana. I live in Kenner, which is incorporated city in Jefferson Parish near Metairie. At the Town and Country Hotel, he used to have a sign above the door that said, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 are dead. Now, Ben Franklin originally came up with that, but Marcello, he lived by it. If you watch anything about the mafia and they talk about Carlos Marcello, they kind of intimated that he was involved with the Kennedy assassination. Of course, that's a whole new, can of worms there. I'd like to do that, but man, that could go off in so many different directions. I may just have to concentrate on one particular avenue that may have been involved. So, Brian, hey, what's up? Thanks for all the compliments, man. I appreciate it. Yes, coin-operated machines are easy to exploit. We have the poker machines, the they're just poker machines. You put money in and you can play and you can win money. Those have been exploited as well. Wherever there's a buck to be made, a criminal will figure it out. Okay? Y'all have any other questions? I think this is the longest we've been doing it for a while, 45 minutes, man. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope it came through clearly. I hope the video didn't stutter. Like I said, I had been having some bandwidth problems, and I ran a test on my bandwidth, and it came out pretty good. So I looked up some videos on YouTube on what could be the problem, and I fixed it, hopefully. So, and I've been using my green screen behind me. But like I said, I like where this is going. The channel is doing well. Like I said, there are trolls, but then you learn how to deal with that. Trying to get a sponsor. I'd love to have a sponsor to help me defer costs and stuff like that. It basically takes a lot of my time, and my wife goes, "You coming down to dinner soon?" Well, I'm working on certain things. Because like I said, there is no staff. It's just me, folks. It's just me. Every creative thing you see is something that I do. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Well, thank you very much, Krista. And thank you very much, Kimberly. Now, gang, I'm going to leave you now. And this should be saved after the stream is over, so you can tell your friends about it. Again, watch for the other episodes. The Vampire of Barcelona is a really good one. A really good one. And it has fingers that reach into the future as far as today is concerned. And you'll see what I mean when you watch the episode. So I will see you guys hopefully very soon. Might do another live one. If you like the live ones, we can. And yeah, Robin, you'll be able to watch it after the stream ends. It'll pop up under the videos. So, and Robin, thank you so much. I owe Robin a lot. Robin has been a very good subscriber, a very good fan. She's been dedicated to this channel, and it has been utterly incredible. So, thank you guys. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Oh, by the way, I'll announce it earlier before I have a live stream. This one was kind of whimsical and off the cuff, but I'd finished the episode last night, and I figured the main body, and I figured why the hell go ahead and do it. All right, so till next time.